Welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Hopkins. By day, I work in corporate, but I have an obsession with all things personal development. So I became a life coach and started this podcast as a way to help others break free from living a life that's good on the outside and wake up to the one they actually want. When I got to my most uncertain place, all I wanted was someone to say, "Hey, Alicia, you're a little off course, and this is what you need to do." That's what I want to be for you. This podcast is a place where I want to share my experiences and provide you with community, knowledge, and inspiration to make change in your life. Sometimes we get a little lost and need help course correcting. If this sounds like you, you're in the right place. Let this be your wake-up call. Now let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Wake Up Call podcast. I have to tell you, I'm laughing because I don't know if you've noticed, but the video of the podcast recordings is now available on Spotify. And I also now have videos up on YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel. But it's funny, as I go to record, I feel like a fish out of water now. I'm like, where do I look? And we're just going to roll with it. I'm going to just do these how I normally do. So no judgment if you're watching these videos and you're like, she looks crazy, because I'm just going to go with it as I always have. So thank you for joining me. I'm excited to connect with you on this episode. And it's been a little bit of a weird episode to even prepare for, if I'm being totally honest, because there's an element of, showing up to the podcast where I feel like I need to be offering, pearls of wisdom or like acting like I've got it all figured out. And I can't tell you I have nothing figured out, right? It couldn't be further from the truth. I think none of us have it all figured out. But in particular, this topic showed me or made me feel even more so that I don't have it all figured out. And when I think about the intention of the podcast, right, it's to talk about lessons I'm learning, things I've learned, interviews with really great experts. But I also think a large part of podcasting is about building community. I know that's what it meant to me when I started finding podcasts that really spoke to me. So I felt like showing up and talking about a topic that isn't exactly like polished and perfect was actually exactly what I needed to do, because if I'm going through it, others are going through it, which then fosters community, right? We all like to know that we're not alone in something we're experiencing. What I've been experiencing lately is what we would probably traditionally call a slump, right? It's been 2 weeks of just a feeling I can't shake, right? Like that something feels off. I don't really feel like I have like the zest or the oomph, right? Like I've been hesitant to even record a podcast. I'm hesitant to even write stuff on social. Like it's that feeling, when the things you normally do all of a sudden feel really foreign and not right. It's like the square in a circle. And I'm guessing that many of you have gone through the same. So during this time, right, there's been certainly times that I've been facing a lot of judgment of myself. Like I've been really harsh and critical of this time. Can you relate to that? Like when you are going through a time in which you feel like you're not being super productive, you swing to this place where you're making judgments about all the ways like you failed, or like you're lazy, or you're uninspired, right? And insert whatever adjective you want there of where you go to. But I just have gotten to this place where I started to question it. And I'm thinking, in these times where I've been going through a quote unquote slump, a lot of times what I have tended to do is to completely overcompensate with action, right? All of a sudden, I'm looking for ways to feel busy, to feel like I'm doing. As someone who identifies as, type A, high achiever, go getter, as I'm willing to bet many of you out there listening feel the same, you often craft almost an element of your identity from accomplishment, right? Because that's where you've gotten where you are today, by doing things, by achieving. So when you go through a time period when you're not, it can put you through a little bit of a spin, right? And you're thinking, well, if I'm not achieving, what am I doing? Like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? And that's what I want to talk about today, is that these time periods of what you traditionally would label as a slump, what if we need to rethink that? What if the slump is just really the slowdown that your body needs, right? That your mind needs, that maybe you're processing something, maybe you're going through it. Maybe, quite frankly, your body is just like, I need a freaking second. And what if instead of overriding that cue and clinging to massive to-do lists and reorganizing closets and running to Target and like going. What if instead we could embrace that slow down, right? Throw away the judgment of the word slump and instead say, what is the reason I'm in this moment right now? What is the learning I need? What is the restoration I need? I hope that you can find that space in yourself to reframe what you traditionally label as bad, right? As if I'm not doing, then it means I'm lazy, I'm failing, I'm not achieving. So, this episode is a space where I just wanted to share some of the learnings I've had as I've been working through this time period. Because I'm going to be honest, it's been uncomfortable. I think I'm almost through this time now, but it still feels a little funky, right? And what I tried to do this time, which was very foreign, was not leap into action and instead just really try to sit and be an observer of what was going on, right? So, what that means is not fighting the feeling, not overriding, overcompensating, and springing into action, and instead just try to be with it and just slow down for once, right? So, here are some of the things that I'm taking away from this time period and some things I just wanted to put out there for you to consider, right? So, I've already kind of alluded to this, but if your tendency, like mine, when you are going through a time when you're not feeling like yourself, is when you cling to action, right? Your mind is so used to being in overdrive that that's your familiar, right? That's your comfortable. Fighting the slump, fighting the slowdown may actually be preventing your growth. Earlier this week on Instagram, I saw a post that I shared, and I felt like it just summarized this so well. And the essence of it was when we resist and fight this feeling of stuckness or uncertainty, what we're actually doing is creating more inertia in our life. But when we stop resisting, we slow down and we lean in and say, what is there to learn from this? That's actually where you build momentum, right? So I hope that if you find yourself in a period in which you don't feel that drive to do, you could, instead of springing into action, use it as an opportunity to tune in. What does your body need right now? What does your mind need right now? Right? I think about the seasons we go through. Winter serves a purpose, spring serves a purpose, summer, fall, right? They all have a reason. You go through that season to lead you to the next. Maybe you are just in your winter right now. Maybe you are just in a period where your body is craving, the need to come in to, slow down, hibernate a little bit. And maybe this is now your opportunity to stop resisting that and tune in instead. I know that's what I've been trying to do and just embrace the slowdown. And I have to say that I do believe I've made some connections and had some aha moments that previously, using my old coping strategy, right, of springing into action, I would have been too busy to make those connections. I would have been too busy. I would have missed the learning. So, what learning is there? What tuning in is there that's meant for you right now? So, something else that's come up during this time is I've realized how much we have strong stories and beliefs around good and bad, right? We want so badly to feel good all the time that we label anything that isn't good as bad, right? We think that if something isn't high vibe only, it must be bad and that we need to do whatever we can to avoid that and get out of it. And I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of other feelings and, experiences you can have other than just good and bad. And that might sound silly, but I'm willing to bet a lot of us, those are the connotations we have of either something's good or something's bad. And we don't realize that there's space in between, there's neutrality, right? We don't have to have an assignment of good, bad, right, wrong. Sometimes things just are. And I also think too, I have this silly, analogy, right? I love ice cream, right? Ice cream is something I would label as good. But if I have ice cream every single day, multiple times a day, because it's good, I like it, I want it, I'm probably going to stop liking ice cream at some point. Or at some point, ice cream is going to stop feeling good and it's going to feel like yucky. I'm just not going to feel good in my body. It's not going to feel as special, right? But without the contrast, like right, if you are only operating in the lane of feel good only, you don't have that contrast to experience, like the special doesn't feel so special anymore, right? So learning that there are other experiences other than good and bad is something that I'm feel like I've been really like learning that lesson of right now, of just experiencing kind of the in between. I think it's also a season that I'm dispelling this notion that doing and action equals good and not doing equals bad, right? I think that's another thing that can be learned from this, and I hope that it is maybe helpful to you or can help reframe that experience. So something else that I've observed during this time period, and which I think is really important, is you need to keep your routines, but don't be afraid to modify them, right? So here's what I mean by that. When I coach, I often, encourage people to come up with, I call it your feel good formula. And what this is a list of activities, things that make you feel good, right? Maybe you come up with 10 ideas, and these are things that you enjoy. It's when you do them, they are restorative, they fill your tank, they make you feel good, right? So, from that feel good formula, I like to identify, call it maybe three things that are your non negotiables. And what I mean by that is that these things that you've identified are activities that need to happen more often than not, right? They're your non negotiables. So, what I have found during this time is I needed to keep my non negotiables in place, but I needed to be a little bit kind with myself with all of those other activities. And here's what I mean by that. So for me, I know every week I need to have space for journaling. I need to have space to go on a walk and I need to listen to podcasts. Like those are three things that just, I guess you could call them, maybe like think of it as like my maintenance, right? Like I need to have those present in my life. Some other things that are outside of that, like reading or maybe like high intensity workouts, some of those things I don't cling so tightly to, right? I let them go. Like right now, a high intensity workout wouldn't feel good to me. So instead of judging myself for why aren't I doing it, I just say, you know what, right now, that's not what best serves me. But let me stick to these things that do make me feel good, right? My non negotiables. I think the reason this is so important is that when we go through time periods when things don't feel right or they feel out of the ordinary, a lot of times that's when we are quick to abandon our habits and routines because you don't feel good, you feel out of sorts, so you're just like, yeah, to heck with it. I don't want to do anything. And then you just stop doing all of your feel good habits, right? But what your habits and routines, those non negotiables do is they serve as like a backbone or structure, right? You have all these other uncertain feelings sort of going on. So by having your non-negotiables in place, it's keeping you tethered to more of your quote unquote normal, regular than you might realize, right? So when you're in a slowdown, don't abandon all your routines. Cling to the ones that you know are like your maintenance you gotta have. And outside of that, use your judgment. Does that feel good? Is it going to restore you? If it's not, let it go, but let it go without judgment, right? And just know you'll come back to it. Like I said earlier, everything is a season, right? So you're going through something right now. Something might not feel good, but you're going to come back around, right? So cling to the routines, the habits that are your non negotiables, and don't be afraid to modify or let go of the others, right? Just because you don't do them right now doesn't mean you're never, ever, ever going to do them again. It just means they don't fit or work right now. It's not what your body needs, right? The last thing I wanted to leave you with is this notion that learning to slow down and listen to your body's cues rather than override them, what you're actually doing is promoting an environment of trust in self, right? your mind, your body, your spirit starts knowing that you're listening, you're tuning in, right? You start fostering just a deeper connection with self by honoring and listening to what your body is telling you. If you've been listening to this podcast for very long, you've heard some of my experiences with anxiety. And I wholeheartedly believe that time in my life came as a result of me not listening, overriding, ignoring, right? Powering through every signal my body was trying to tell me until it got to a place that it was like, I am self destructing, right? And then that's when I got into crisis mode. So I believe that in listening to these time periods that your body is asking you to slow down, that you don't feel quite like you're in a season of productivity, just trust it, right? Know that you're being led through it. Know that there's a reason you're going through this season and don't fight it, right? You start building that trust, fostering a deeper connection. I'm all about, feeling connected in your mind and body because when you're not, I think that that's when things like anxiety, I think that's when stress, I think a lot of things happen as a result of that. So by listening to what your mind and your body needs, by slowing down, right? You're actually doing something that's really great for you overall. So I hope that these points, these learnings resonate with you. I hope that it sticks with you whether or not you find yourself in one of those quote unquote slumps. And I hope that it helps to reassure you that it's okay, right? Like this is just a season. You're going to come through it. There's a reason. Look for the learning and also reframe from thinking it's a slump to thinking that it's something that you're giving your body to restore and that you're going to come out the other side of it with learnings you wouldn't have otherwise had. So, guys, thank you as always for tuning into the podcast. I love connecting with you here. Like I said, this was a little bit of a weird one for me. I didn't know how to show up for it, but I wanted to show up because it is my belief that there's community built through having conversations like this. So, I hope that you walk away feeling maybe heard, seen. It's helpful to know that others identify with the feeling you're going through. So, I hope that this provided that for you. And I can't wait to connect with you on a future episode. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the Wake Up Call podcast. If you liked what you heard today, I would love for you to subscribe and leave a review. It takes just a few minutes and does wonders for helping other people find the podcast. If you want to connect outside of the podcast, you can do so by following @Alicia D. Hopkins on Instagram. And if you really liked the episode you just listened to, do me a favor. Would you screenshot the episode and tag me? I would love to see what's resonating with you. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope today's episode helped you to see that you can wake up to the change that's possible in your life.